Thank you, Ceann Corlin.
2 minutes.
Absolutely. Taoiseach, the former Minister for the Environment, John Gormley, as you know, established an independent review into the planning practices in a number of local authorities, and indeed had undertaken considerable work to ensure that those would happen. Well, I'll come to that now, Minister Rabbitte. But I'd like to ask Taoiseach, why is Minister Phil Hogan, Minister Alan Kelly, Minister Keogh misleading the public when they have said that Minister Gormley had done nothing to progress his independent reviews of planning practices in a number of local authorities? And over a year since he took office, why don't we still have any outcome of his internal reviews 9 months after he suppressed the independent reviews that Minister Gormley had established? Now, I'd just like to put on the record of the House what Minister Hogan had on his desk when he arrived into office. He had an extensive dossier prepared by planning officials in the department following an internal review of the complaints, which went on from 2007 to 2009. He had a series of reports from the managers in each of the local authorities submitted in response to a formal request from the Minister using his statutory powers under the Planning and Development Acts. He had terms of reference for a panel of planning consultants to carry out independent reviews in the 6 local authorities. He had a completed tender process to select this panel of consultants, and he had letters of appointment ready to be issued to the members of that panel. And he was absolutely convinced, on the basis of the dossiers presented to him, that this required an independent review of planning. Now, with all of the debate that's going on this week in the House, everybody seems to be agreed that the planning process has to be above reproach. There are very significant reasons why Minister Gormley proceeded with these inquiries. And frankly, questions need to be answered as to why an independent review was suppressed by this incoming government. It's a very serious issue that demands a serious response from the government.
Thank you.
And I'm asking, why was the independent reviews established by Minister Gormley suppressed?
Taoiseach, excuse me. The Taoiseach is quite capable of answering the question without assistance.
Thank you,
please allow somebody to ask a question. and I've worked with him long enough, and I have every confidence in him.
Thanks, Ceann Corlin.
Thank you.
I'm greatly reassured by your confidence. Can I welcome Deputy Martin's interest in probity in the planning system? The former Minister for the Environment, Heritage and Local Government, Minister Gormley, announced independent inquiries into 7 local authorities in June 2010. When he left office more than 7 months later, he had still not commenced these. The new minister considered that the very considerable cost of retaining consultants to conduct these inquiries required some further examination. He instructed officials to conduct an internal review and to report to him on what further actions might be warranted. These further actions might include changes to legislation, new regulations or further guidance on a range of issues in the operation of the planning system in local authorities. However, the findings of the internal review were not to be prejudged, and it was always the case that some further investigations, including independent inquiries as originally announced, might form part of those outcomes. And that remains the position today. The review will be completed following the publication of the retail planning guidelines, which are due for publication before the end of April. The Minister has committed to issuing a public statement outlining in full the complaints that are at issue, the response and any appropriate actions to be pursued in regard to further policy development and guidance in line with the commitments in the programme for government and the relevant recommendations in the report of the Mahon Tribunal report. So there is no planning inquiry being suppressed, Deputy Martin. The reviews are being conducted in the Department of the Environment. When that process is completed, as I said, following the publication of the retail planning guidelines at the end of April, there will be a full public statement made which will set out in full the complaints which were made, the action that was taken in the Department of the Environment to review those complaints and examine them, and then what further action might need to be taken arising from those reviews. So nothing is being suppressed. It's being looked at in the Department of the Environment, and the full information will be published.
Thank you. Deputy Martin, 1 minute.
I have to say that's completely disingenuous. Because it's very important to point out that an internal review of these complaints has already been carried out. That answer this morning is a complete whitewash. No, and the bottom line is, as far back as 2009, the spatial planning section of the Department of the Environment had already carried out an internal review of planning practices in these counties. And just to give you an illustration in terms of the former Louth County manager, Mr. Quinlivan, who carried out an investigation into Carlow.
Sorry, this is
and
a supplementary question, please.
I'm asking a question. It's a very serious issue.
I appreciate
and
that.
he said,
but you have 1 minute.
He said it's important. He said that effective planning enforcement to ensure legislation observed in practice was not in place in Carlow. It rendered the whole enforcement process questionable, and Quinlivan recommended that, quote, prolonged consultation with those who breached the planning system must not take place. Complaints were received from many people, from the public, from the Ombudsman, from Antashka and many other reputable bodies about planning practices in these counties in recent years. And all of the heckling, all of the heckling, and I'm not prejudging, I'm not prejudging anything.
All your councillors.
I'm not prejudging anything.
Please ask your question.
It's all your councillors controlling.
I'm not prejudging anything. I have no difficulty, without fear or favour, of having independent planning investigation. And why? Because I can tell you, I've spoken to Minister
You're
Gormley.
over time. Would you please
and the bottom
ask
line here is there was internal resistance to these inquiries in the system. That's the bottom line here.
Deputy,
internal resistance to these planning investigations. And I asked questions last evening in the debate, are we all satisfied that our planning process is above reproach?
Thank you.
And I would simply say to you, I would ask you, Taoiseach, to go and meet Minister Gormley.
Thank you.
Go and look at the dossier yourself. Look at the extensive material. He established an independent inquiry. He had established the process. It was suppressed. And it is completely dishonest to say, that there's now another internal review. An internal review had been completed.
Thank you, Deputy.
Consultants were appointed. And Minister Hogan, who had said prior to this that there were spurious complaints, he went off and suppressed them when he came into office.
Please resume your seat. It's just about asking you a question. Thank you very much. Taoiseach will reply. Thank you. Now, can I have some silence, please? Thank you.
Yeah,
we can't hear what's being said.
The position, Deputy Martin, is that each year the Department of the Environment receives about 8,000 representations from various sources, members of the public, NGOs, representative organisations, and sometimes planning authorities themselves. And some of these concern complaints and dissatisfaction with regard to planning decisions or planning policies that have been carried out. Now, specifically, there were a number of those that were identified by Minister Gormley in a number of local authorities. The local authorities concerned were Dublin City Council, Carlow County Council, Galway County Council, Cork City Council, Cork County Council, Meath County Council and Donegal County Council. Those are being examined, and what is being no. I mean, first of all, there is no suppression here. There's no suppression. There was nothing in reality. There was nothing in reality done about those in the period from the time that they were announced until Minister Gormley left office. There was some question of appointing consultants, but you don't have to have consultants for everything. I mean, one of the problems of the last government was anytime there was an issue, anytime, Deputy Martin, that there was an issue to be addressed by the last government, the first answer always was to send for consultants and spend a large amount of money on doing it. Now, there's no need to get excited. There is no need at all for you to get excited.
Because we're way over
time. No need at all for you to get excited about this. The issues that the issues that are being looked at will be published in full. If there's any follow-up action that is required to be taken, that action will be taken.
Thank you.
But there is no suppression. There is no suppression.
Chair,
and frankly, Deputy Martin, I mean, I can understand why you're on the back foot on planning this week with the debate on the Mahon Tribunal. And it's a classic form of political defence that attack is the best form of defence. And what you're simply doing here is you have taken. No, we're not ignoring it. We're not ignoring it. It is being examined in the Department of the Environment. It will be published in full. Do you understand that? It will be published. It will be done. It will be published. It will be published in full, and then whatever action needs to be taken following that will be taken.
Thank you. Now, I call on Deputy Jerry Adams, and in doing so, could I remind deputies that in the last question we are... Sorry. Excuse me, would you please? We're 4 minutes over time in the last question. Now, I would ask you, please, to obey the rules that you set yourselves. Now, please, and show some sort of respect to the person who's posing the question and somebody who's asking it. Thank you. Deputy, I don't need any help from you, Deputy McGrath. Deputy Adams, thank you. Deputy Adams. Deputy Adams. Will you please stay quiet? Thank you. Deputy Adams. Please, thank you. Would you please proceed? Yes, thank you.
Okay, Hanishta, Tasha Gary needs to learn go mage more Arigid and Yek and Realtus la Anglo ag Gerald Nashakton Shaw, August Egan Urkurna go may and Bactonus Egardu. The bar were policy. Agus not will say fear, not may in Bontaista, the Grenada, Serenig, Atag, Follenschwi, Macan and Realtus, August the bar, Bart, Gatter, Troika. Tanista, the Finance Committee was briefed yesterday by the Governor of the Central Bank about the promissory note debt to Anglo-Irish Bank. And it's very clear now, as the Taoiseach has told us many, many times, that the government intends to pay in full the €31 billion promissory note to Anglo, and that you will pay Anglo €3.1 billion later this week. So, Taoiseach, can you confirm that Anglo will purchase an Irish government bond at an interest rate in the region of 7%? And do you accept that this interest rate is higher than would be paid under the promissory note? And, Taoiseach, can you confirm that this agreement will not involve any write-down in the principal debt to Anglo and will actually lead to an increase in the state's overall sovereign debt? And Taoiseach, just to help the Sinn Féin people here, is this what you meant when you said it will be Labour's way?
Thank you. Taoiseach.
I'm a little surprised at Deputy Adams' question, because following the meeting of the Finance Committee yesterday, your finance spokesperson, Deputy Doherty, acknowledged on radio that this is a good deal, will enhance our ability to return to the market in 2014, and will get us over the hump.
Thank you.
Guarantee the bank.
Would you please? Thank you. Could I ask you again, please, to show respect? Thank you. Thank you.
The Governor of the Central Bank, when he attended the Finance Committee yesterday, confirmed what the Minister for Finance has said, and what the government, what the Taoiseach has said here consistently, what I've said here consistently, which is that what the government is negotiating is an arrangement whereby the cash payment of the promissory note will be settled by way of a long-term government bond. He confirmed that those negotiations are going well. He expressed optimism, and I share that optimism, that they will be concluded successfully. They are complex and they are technical. They are proceeding, and I share the Governor's confidence that they will be concluded successfully. And to be honest, Deputy Adams, I think in the country's interest, and there is a time, Deputy Adams, when you should put country before party. In the country's interest, you should wish that process well, rather than getting up here every day and appearing to be gleeful, as you now are, at any prospect that it might go any way wrong.
Deputy Adams.
I'm actually bemused, Taoiseach, at your unmitigated cheek. But anyway, let's ignore all of that. I'll remind you of the person who founded your party when he said, I paraphrase him, that the country without its people means nothing to me. Now, you have said, and the Taoiseach has said, we will never look for a debt write-down. We're not going to have the name defaulter written across our foreheads.
Please.
We will not impose losses on bondholders. Now, Taoiseach, this is, you use this phrase, it's complex and technical. What's complex and technical? You also make a big point about it's going to be successful. Why wouldn't it be successful? So let me try and explain to you what I understand.
Would you ask a question? Ask a question. Thank you.
What I understand, and perhaps you can confirm this for me.
Thank you.
That Labour's way, regardless of what you said in the election, means 1, you intend paying this bad banking debt. 2, you will replace this bad banking debt with an increased sovereign debt. 3, your deal increases the state's sovereign debt. And 4, you intend paying a higher interest on this $3.1 billion.
Thank you.
Now, Taoiseach, just for once, would you please answer that question? Don't go off on flights of fancy. Answer the question which has been put to you.
Thank you. Taoiseach.
Well, I share James Connolly's view that the country without its people means nothing to me. And that includes the people who are no longer with us, Deputy Adams.
Yes.
In relation to the issue of the negotiations, let me, if you find it too complex, let me explain it to you in very clear terms. This government set out, when it was formed, to negotiate a better deal for Ireland, to negotiate better terms for the bailout arrangements that have been made by the previous government, better terms on the EU-IMF deal. Part of those negotiations was to negotiate an arrangement. We consider that the promissory note arrangement, which was entered into by the previous government, was a very expensive way of dealing with the bank bailout. And we set about negotiating an alternative way of doing that. As the Minister for Finance has made clear to this House, that approach is based on settling the promissory note issue by way of a long-term government bond. The discussions on that, in relation to the detail of how that is to be worked out, those are continuing. The Governor of the Central Bank yesterday briefed the Finance Committee and told the Finance Committee that those negotiations are going well and expressed optimism about their outcome. And I don't think that it is useful, while those negotiations are going on, to get into the detail of what may or may not emerge from them. The negotiations are going well, and the Governor of the... I'm not going to.
Sorry,
I'm not going to. I've made it very clear. Deputy Adams.
We're over time, please. Thank you very much.
Deputy Adams. Neither a shop steward,
Sorry, Deputy Adams. Sorry.
Neither a shop steward in an individual employment, or the Governor of the Central Bank, or the Minister for Finance is going to negotiate in public. When you try to negotiate, let's understand this. Let's understand this.
Taoiseach, we're over time. Thank you.
What matters here?
Taoiseach.
What matters? What matters? What matters? What matters here? What matters here, Deputy Adams, is that we get the best outcome in the interests of the Irish people.
Thank you.
I'm confident that the government will succeed in doing that. And when that is completed and done, it will be announced by the Minister for Finance, just as he announced the broad framework of what he was doing here in the House last week.
Thank you. Deputy Shane Ross, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. There were two announcements made yesterday. One was of significance. One was one which Deputy Adams has already referred to, which was the revelation or confirmation by Patrick Honan, Governor of the Central Bank, that the deal was done, or virtually done. The second was made by yourself in the House here, that a referendum would come on the 31st of May. And I suppose an observer could be forgiven for noting that the timing was not possibly coincidental. I want to congratulate the government if they have achieved a substantial progress on the Anglo-Irish promissory notes. I want to say any concession is a good concession. But I was worried, and I remain worried, by something which the Governor said yesterday and is reported as saying, and it was news to me that it was official policy, when he said that the Anglo-Irish promissory notes were a source of risk to financial stability of the state. If that is the case, and what we've got here in the last 24 hours, and which is obviously going to be sealed in the next 24 hours or 48 hours, is a deal on a very small part of the Anglo-Irish promissory notes, 3.1 billion this week. The government is briefing, and no doubt the Taoiseach will reply, that this is part of a staging post of ongoing negotiations, and we are going to get further concessions on the debt. What I'd like to ask him is this: is the financial stability of the state still going to be at risk from these notes next week?
Thank you.
Well, first of all, can I thank Deputy Ross for his acknowledgement and congratulation of the government on the progress that is being made to date. The approach that the government is taking on this is, first of all, as you know, we've been in discussions for some time with the Troika in relation to the overall size of the promissory note, the entire 31 billion issue. The object is to reach a point in those negotiations where a paper will be produced with the Troika, which will address that in its totality. The issue of the promissory note, which falls due on the 31st of March, clearly has to be dealt with. And as I said earlier, the Minister for Finance has indicated that the approach that is being discussed to deal with that is to settle that by way of a long-term government bond. The whole issue, as you say, is framed in the context of debt sustainability for the state. I don't think there is any secret about the fact that this time last year, at the time of the change of government, when the new government took over, this country was teetering on the edge of a cliff. And the sustainability, the debt sustainability of the state, the future economic well-being of the state was very, very much at risk. Now, we have, over the course of the last year, we have pulled that back from the edge. We have succeeded in a succession of negotiations with the Troika in particular, in getting changes in the terms of the bailout arrangement which were negotiated prior to our entry into government. They included, as you know, the issue of the interest rate, number of changes which allowed the government a greater degree of flexibility in our own recovery process. There's the discussions that are now taking place in relation to the promissory note, which is due on the 31st of March, and also in relation to the wider issue of the promissory notes in totality, and we're confident of getting a good outcome from those negotiations. I think the stage that we're at now is one where we have brought about stability in terms of our economic situation and our financial state. We now need to move on from that to recovery, to ensuring that the jobs come, that the investment comes, and that is why, in parallel with the discussions that the government has been conducting with the Troika, we have also very actively engaged in a very strong marketing strategy, I suppose, for this country to secure investment. And of course, part of that strategy is the work that the Taoiseach is doing over the last couple of days and today in China.
Thank you. Deputy Ross.
Thank the Taoiseach for his reply. I take it he means that the financial stability of the state, therefore, is restored and has been restored. Which brings me to my final question, and that is this. If this 3.1 billion, the relief on 3.1 billion and on further bank debt is restoring the financial stability of the state, we have been led to believe, and rightly led to believe, that the austerity package which this government has imposed on this country and on the people of this country is due to the fact that the banks have behaved in such an irresponsible manner and incurred such debt. Can you point to, now that we are getting relief on the bank debt, can you point to something tangible which we can say to the people, you're getting now some relief on austerity as a result of the achievement this week?
Thank you.
Well, all of this is it's a slow, gradual process. There is no instant, one-day solution. We wake up and we're going to be out of the economic difficulties that we found ourselves in. As I said earlier, we have moved from being on the edge of the cliff to one where we have stabilised the financial situation in the country. We're making progress in relation to the arrangements that were made for the bailout. Quite apart from that, we have a problem with our deficit. We are spending more than we're taking in. As a consequence, we have to borrow that. We're doing two things to address that. One is to get the deficit down, which we have to do in any event, because no country can continue to spend more than it's taking in and continue to add to its borrowings all of the time. So that is proceeding at that level. But secondly, we also have to get our economy to grow and jobs to be created. And that is why we have put such a strong emphasis on getting jobs and investment, and why we're investing so much effort in the restoration of our international reputation, which we are succeeding in getting back, and why we believe that will bring about in investment. The other dimension of this, of course, and is a dimension that I think is partly in our control and partly not in our control, and that has been the European dimension of this. There is no doubt but that the uncertainty surrounding the euro and the eurozone over the latter part of 2011 and moving into 2012 has created difficulties in terms of securing investment in this country. And that is why, to come back to the opening line of your question, that is why it is important that the Stability Treaty is supported in order to bring stability and security to the euro, which in turn will underpin the confidence that investors need to invest in Europe and particularly to invest in Ireland.
Thank you.